Why should voters elect you to the Ohio State Senate, and what makes you qualified for that position?
Well, I've never run for office before, but I've done a tremendous amount of public service. Most of my service has been towards the students that I work with at Bowling Green. I've been there for 14 years as an educator, and I'm a teaching professor. About 10 years ago, I started working with to help form my chapter of the AAUP, and that's our teachers union at the university. I helped collect cards and form our chapter, and I was elected to the bargaining team 3 times in a row. So my peers trust me to navigate that legal system and negotiate for them and get a good contract. So the work that we've done there has helped raise faculty pay from some of the lowest in the state to about the same as our peers, which is really nice. But even more rewarding is that about 2 years ago, we were ranked the #3 institution in the country for teaching quality. So we're helping faculty, we're helping the students, and I know I'm ready to go to Columbus and do the same thing there.
Northwest Ohio is dealing with issues relating to clean water because of algae on Lake Erie, on top of other reasons. How will you advocate for a clean environment that District 2 residents deserve?
We absolutely deserve that. You know, the lake is in Erie. The lake is a resource for not just our community, but we share it with other states and other nations. So we have a responsibility to take care of those waters. It's a source. It's a source of our economic strength in this area. We use it for the fisheries. We use it for the tourism economy in Ottawa and Erie. And absolutely, it's the source of much of our drinking water in the entire district. So we have H2 Ohio right now, which is a voluntary program that encourages farmers to regulate the amount of nutrients they put on their fields. But we can't rely on we can't rely entirely on voluntary cooperation. We ran into a similar situation in the 70s. We had corporations dumping PCBs into the rivers, and from farms, what we were facing was silt runoff. So over the winter, the farmers were not planting cover crops, and the soil would run off. It would run into the streams and then run into the lake. And that was choking the water. It was poisoning our lake and also choking the oxygen out of the lake. So we used a system of regulations and incentives together that required corporations to clean up, encouraged farmers to adopt better farming practices. And I think we're ready for that now. It's nitrogen and phosphates that are creating the algal blooms in our lake, combined with higher temperatures. But we know what that's from. It's from oversaturated fields that have too much manure sprayed on them, or the farmers are spraying the manure on when the ground is frozen. So we know what's causing it. We can use a system of both regulations and incentives, and working together, we can clean the lake up.
If elected, how will you bring more jobs to District 2 as the economy recovers from coronavirus shutdowns?
That's a fantastic question. So I'm working with some national level candidates. We are working on a proposal called the National Infrastructure Bank. So this is a bank that can provide up to $4 trillion in lending. It would not increase our deficit. It would create as many as 25 million jobs nationally. And these are long-term union jobs. And it would be designed specifically to fund projects to repair or replace our infrastructure. So we could have a more robust electrical system. We could get high-speed internet to rural areas. We could rebuild our roads. We could ensure that our bridges are safe and they're not going to collapse on us. All of this would be funded from revolving loans from the National Infrastructure Bank. So it's quite an impressive proposal. We would immediately benefit from that here in Ohio, and that's what I support.
You already touched on this a little bit, but strong, appealing infrastructure is one of the main ways communities attract employers. What specifically is your vision for District Two's aging highways, roads, bridges, etc.?
So I think we did cover that a little bit, but I'm going to talk about another kind of infrastructure. I'm going to talk about education. So you're right. Companies don't come to a community because of lower taxes. Companies come to a community because there's a workforce that's able to do the work that they need done, and because there's infrastructure that can handle it, whether that's railroads, whether that's roads, whether that's internet technology for new technology corporations. So a robust plan of rebuilding our infrastructure technologically and our physical infrastructure needs to go hand in hand with rebuilding our schools. So for the last 20 years, we've known that our schools are not funded in a constitutional way. Right now, a person's zip code is more indicative of the quality of their education than the state school system itself. So we need to equalize that. We need to make sure that all of our schools are funded fairly and that we're keeping public money in public schools. But I want to talk about the trajectory of our schools. 20 years ago, we were 5th in the nation for the quality of our schools, and that's outstanding. Currently, we're 32 in the nation. And although that's not at the bottom, that is not the right direction for us. We know that the people coming out of our schools, finishing high school, finishing a professional program, finishing a 4-year degree, that is the future of our economy. Those are the people that are going to be working in the jobs of the next generation. So we need an educational infrastructure, and we need a physical infrastructure to be a strong economy again.
Healthcare has been a concern for many Ohioans. Now, with the potential appointment of Amy Coney Barrett, the ACA could be struck down. What will you do to protect residents' healthcare if elected?
That's an outstanding question. So the ACA is an amazing piece of legislation. What we've been focusing nationally on healthcare, but in fact, the vast majority of regulation happens at the state level. So we can do a tremendous amount in Columbus to make sure that that insurance companies continue to provide policies that provide actual coverage. Before the ACA, there were bare bones plans that didn't really cover some of the most difficult healthcare needs. So we can protect our community against that. While the ACA still exists, we can work harder as a state to make sure we're taking advantage of all of the federal incentives to participate. Initially, we as a state, we took advantage of many of the benefits of the program. But in the last few years, we're one of the few states in the nation that are actually losing. The number of people in Ohio who are covered by health insurance is actually shrinking. And that's because we have partisans in the legislature that are eliminating our cooperation with the ACA. So I want to make sure that as long as it's still in place, we're cooperating with the federal government and we're making sure that our citizens have access to those benefits. And if we should lose it because of appointments to the Supreme Court, I want to make sure that we enact strong insurance regulations that cover people here in the state and make sure that we keep drug prices down.
As of recent, your opponent, Teresa Gavarone, has been running ads in support of law enforcement and public safety. If elected, how will you keep the residents of District 2 safe?
I want to talk about that because, oh no, I have lost it. So I'm not advocating defunding the police. I think each community has a different needs. So some of the rural portions of our community need increased first responder presence. Maybe that's more paramedics, maybe that's more firefighters, maybe that's more police. Other parts of our district feel over-policed. Some residents in our district feel unsafe with police policies as they stand. So Barack Obama has identified 8 concrete police reforms that can reduce police violence by as much as 70%. So those are called the 8 can't wait. They include banning chokeholds, a use of force continuum. I don't remember all 8 of them off the top of my head, but the 8 can't wait are 8 police reforms that I do support and would like to enact to make sure that every single person in our community gets equal service from our police force.
The district you're running to represent includes parts of Lucas County, which has had to deal with an opioid problem. What action will you take against addiction?
You know, I think we've gone off track as a nation. So for the last pretty much since Reagan, we've been dealing with addiction as a criminal issue. Really, it's a healthcare crisis. We need to begin dealing with addiction as a healthcare issue rather than a policing issue. So we need to increase access to treatment. We need to increase access to healthcare so that people aren't turning to self-medicating through an extra legal drug system. And we need to make sure that instead of jailing people and warehousing them, that we're giving them treatment for addiction while they remain productive members of our society.
Agriculture matters because a lot of farmers grow food and other things in District 2. How will you help farmers who are struggling during this time because of the pandemic?
That's a fantastic question. Many people haven't heard about this, but workers in the meatpacking industry, field workers are struggling disproportionately with rates of COVID infection. So we need to make sure that unions are at the forefront of making sure that workers can return to work safely. So that's one part of the answer. So we need to make sure that people that are working are in safe working conditions. How do we directly help farmers? That becomes a more challenging issue. Certainly there's a number of proposals on the table for subsidies. I think that a lot of what's hurting farmers is not necessarily COVID, but fluctuating foreign policy. Oddly enough, the Republican trade war with China has crushed corn and soybean prices, and they've never fully recovered. So farmers now are struggling not just with the ability to harvest their food or the ability to have animals butchered, but in fact to make sure that when they sell something on the market, they're getting a price that allows them to make a living at it. So we need to stabilize our foreign policy. We need to begin repairing relationships with our international trade partners and stabilizing food prices so that farmers can adjust to how they can make a living on their own. So some of that is outside of state control. Certainly we can work within the state of Ohio, we can address some of the labor issues.
Larry Householder was arrested for his role in a bribery scandal while in office as the Ohio House Speaker. Do you think corruption is systemic in Columbus? And if so, why do you think that is?
It's clear that corruption is systemic in Columbus. I don't have to remember too far back to remember the Noe Coingate scandal. So that scandal involved Republican donors dipping their fingers into workers' compensation fund. So they took $50 million of workers' money and invested it in a bogus coin investment scheme, and they lost 37 of the $50 million. So they have no idea where that money went. That was the first scandal. The next Republican scandal that I remember is ECOT, where Republican donors were given millions of dollars of unregulated money from our public school system. to an e-learning program that perhaps has never actually educated a single kid. We're still suing to recover some of that money as well. The next Republican scandal I recall is the payday lending scandal. So the House Majority Leader, the Republican House Majority Leader before Householder, was run out of Dodge by the FBI for the payday lending scandal. And now the biggest one of them all, the $1.5 billion bailout. So apparently in Ohio, the cost of doing business is $60 million in corruption. We can't afford that as a state anymore. We're paying a corruption tax every single day. I'm paying it in my workers' compensation fund. I'm paying it through my kids' education. Now I'm paying it through my electric bill. It's time that we put a new party in power. It's time that we had balanced power in Columbus. And it's time that we clean up politics in the state of Ohio.
How will you serve as an advocate to those whose voices may go unheard, like minorities, members of the LGBTQ community, women, and others?
I'm going to admit the conversation around race is often uncomfortable, but I'm going to tell you that I have a commitment to standing and being a part of that conversation. So I want to be an ally to every identity and every race. And as a white man, I acknowledge that I have a lot of privilege. And it's incumbent upon me to listen and support the needs of those parts of our community. So I know that the system's not fair to every member of our community right now. So I want to listen to what needs to happen. I want to stand shoulder to shoulder with all of the people of color in my community and move forward together.
What else do you want voters to know about you and the campaign you're running?
That's a great question. So I'm a parent. I have a wife and 2 kids. My kids are in public school. I'm a teacher. The reason that I'm running for office is for other people, not for me. I have enough and I'm content in my life. But I know that my kids are coming up in a world that doesn't have the same opportunities that I had. And I know that my students are paying tremendously more for school than I had to pay when I was a student at Ohio State. So I'm running for office because I want everybody to have the same opportunity that I had.
District 2 State Senate nominee Joel Orduricio, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.